Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in.
It is Kate and PozzA here, and popping in and out will be Kelly because she has given her thoughts on a whole variety of topics that we're going to talk about, but she cannot virtually be in this phone call. We're just going to jump straight into some news, and the first bit of news I want to cover is the one that is so surprising. It came to light over the course of Sunday that Bendsneyder in Moto2 is going to be replaced by Dani Munoz until the end of the season. Now, this is shocking in a lot of ways. It turns out that management went to the team and got them to vote about who should be replaced. Should it be Bo? Should it be Jaume Masia? And the team voted for Masia to be replaced, but they're getting rid of Bo anyway. What do you think about this whole situation?
It's dumb. It was a stupid decision, and it makes the team look horrendous. You've now, in the span of about 20 minutes, gotten rid of a rider, eradicated any trust that the other rider had in your team because they voted to kick him out, and then eradicated the trust of the team and the team boss himself because he just didn't respect their decision. He's managed to basically eradicate a whole team relationship in about 20 minutes for a decision that was so dumb. How stupid in the head do you have to be? And it's unfair on Bo. Like, he's actually going on a whole tangent. He's had a howler of a, what would you say, career because he's had so many injuries. He actually got that chance and he thought, I could actually do something with this. And now he's been just... his trust is gone because this team boss doesn't know what to do with his own team. And it's depressing to look at. So I'm annoyed over it.
Yeah, I think it's harsh on, obviously, Bendsneyder losing his ride, but I feel like it would have also been harsh had Masia lost his ride. Obviously, it's not been historically the best team, and they're not really ever sort of in, like, top 10 contention, and I don't think switching riders mid-season will change that. Honestly, I feel like what should have happened is obviously both riders just keep their seats until the end of the year, then they make the decision, because I feel like it's obvious that Dani Munoz would have been in that seat next year regardless. I guess it is good to get him in and just get a bit of experience, a bit more experience up his sleeve. I know before this news, some people still didn't really like the new owner of the team that's come in, and I've seen a lot more sort of anger towards him already just with this decision. So hopefully they don't do something like this in the future, and I sort of hope Bendsneyder can still find a ride at hopefully a better team.
It would be quite a nice turnaround for him to pick up a different seat in a much more competitive team. Other news that broke is a heck of a lot of Moto2 and Moto3 signings. So the first one is probably the one that I find most expected, and that is the news that David Alonso is going to Moto2. Didn't doubt it for a second, not with his incredible form of late. It will be interesting to see how he adapts to a Moto2 bike because he is such a small rider, but I'm just excited by this prospect.
Yeah, I'm sort of half expecting him to obviously push to win the title as soon as he can, more so for the reason that he'll have time to sort of put on a bit of muscle, put on a bit of size to get more adapted to the Moto2 bike, because obviously we've seen in the past some of the small riders that are really good in Moto3 end up sort of struggling at Moto2 at first. The riders that I can think of off the top of my head would be Masia and Sasaki this year, but even riders like Lorenzo Della Porta a couple years ago. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, he's got the talent to adapt, so if he can get the size right, then I think he'll have a really solid rookie year.
I'm happy. I'm really happy that David Alonso is moving up to Moto2. I know he is, like, Colin Vyre's championship rival per se, even though David Alonso has no rivals. He's ahead of everyone. But so essentially I shouldn't really like him, but I do. I like the lad a lot. He's kind. There's nothing wrong with him. He's not involved in any kind of drama really. And he's really quick, so I'm really happy to see him, confirmed for a Moto2. I feel like he can do really great things, even though it is compared, to, Jaime Masia, who will come into conversation later, trust me, but, Jaime Masia and Ayumu Sasaki, and even Dennis Onchu for a while, they all struggled when they moved up to Moto2, but I feel like he can adapt very quickly, so I'm actually very excited to see how he will perform against Colin when they move up to Moto2. I feel like that could be something to really look out for. yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy to hear that.
2 full teams have now been confirmed, and I'm going to butcher the name of at least one of these riders. So again, my apologies for my pronunciation. But the 2 lineups are Battelle and Kelso, who are confirmed to be racing at MTA Helmets next year. And at Iltrans, we have, and Moto2, we have Diogo Moreira and Hutas. What do you think about these lineups? Do you think these will be a good pairing, bad pairing?
Huertas and Moreira at Iltrans. Pretty solid lineup. We have Huertas moving from Superbike, which will actually be a bit of a big move, considering most people do move from like Moto2 to Superbike rather than Superbike to Moto whatever. But yeah, I'm actually really excited to see what they can do together. Moreira is very solid. He's very consistent. You wouldn't see him involved in too many incidents of his own causing. So I feel like if they can both work together, they could actually be really solid and get some good points, even some podiums if they really put their minds to it.
MTA in Moto3. I'm hopeful that it'll be a good lineup, obviously, with Kelso being Australian. I hope he can sort of start fighting more for podiums. I know he's been in the top 6 a couple times this year, so hopefully he can build on that. And for Battelle, it's sort of just finding that race form. I know last year he was doing really well in qualifying, but then just dropped back as soon as the race started. So hopefully on those two, they can sort of just improve on both of those aspects. And for Italtrans and Moto2, I'm pretty sure Moreira signed on a 2-year deal at first, so it's not really surprising that he'll be at the team next year. As for Adrian Huertas, I'm honestly quite excited to see what he'll do. He's one of the front runners in the Supersport class in Superbikes, and he's looked good, especially this year, but I'm pretty sure he was up there as well last year. So hopefully they can both do really well next year.
And the final rider signing that is confirmed, because we are just going to talk about some rumours in a minute, but the final one that is confirmed is the fact that Joe Roberts has re-signed with American Racing. Realistically, I don't think there was anywhere else where he could go in Moto2 unless, he did manage to sway some teams, just because he's getting to that age now where you can't really see him improving or going any further. How do you see Roberts re-signing playing out long term?
Yeah, I feel like the ship sort of sailed for him on getting a MotoGP ride just with his age. I think he's 29 next year, and that's sort of a bit too late to start. As for re-signing with the team, obviously I'm not that shocked. They're an American team, and he's the only really, realistic rider they could get in that team in Moto2 that is American.
Joe Roberts being re-signed wasn't a shock. Unfortunately, I don't think that man is ever going to get a MotoGP ride, ever. He's too inconsistent. I mean, a round ago, he was actually on to get some really good points for the championship because he is actually fighting for that championship, believe it or not. But he crashed out on the last lap of his completely own accord. I feel like he just can't handle pressure and he just goes down, and I'm happy he got re-signed. I feel like he's done enough to retain a seat in Moto2. I just don't think he'll ever get to MotoGP, unfortunately. He's been in Moto2 for way too long, and he's just not doing anything with it. He's too inconsistent. He's a bit aggressive when he doesn't need to be, and it's just all very sad. But I think he's a great addition to the Moto2 grid. He does add a bit of experience, and he adds a bit of drama when it's needed. I hate to say, but it is true. So yeah, happy with that.
Now, on to the rumours. The first rumour is all but confirmed, and that is the fact that newly crowned Red Bull Rookies champion Alvaro Carpe will be, well, the rumour is that he has signed for Aki Ayo's team in Moto3, which obviously Aki Ayo basically, he grows his riders so well, and I think this is such an exciting move and quite expected. Do you think this rumour is true? And what do you think about it if it is or isn't?
As a KTM fan, I am hoping that it's true. Obviously, it's a very Akiayo sort of move to try and pull in the Rookies Cup champion. I know he pulled in Jose Antonio Rueda for last year when he won Rookies Cup the year before, and he was trying to get Angel Piqueras under his wing in both his rookie season and for next year. But yeah, I'm hoping he can do well. Obviously, with Akio, the riders he's produced so far, sort of just unmatched that in that sort of area. So hopefully it's a good career move. I know some riders sort of falter at the pressure of being an Akio rider, but yeah, hopefully he does really well.
One of the riders that you mentioned he wanted to have it under his wing is Angel Piqueras. Now, this is probably the most interesting rumor I've heard in a while, and that rumor is that he's going to get bought out of his Leopard Honda contract for 200,000 euros. Part of me really wants to see it because he replicates his performances that he's doing on a Honda. On a KTM, he could just demolish the field next year. What do you think? Do you think how much money would you be willing to pay for a rider if you're the likes of Empty Helmets MSI, who is where he's rumoured to be going?
Yeah, obviously with both of the teams that are rumoured to be going after him, they also both have that path up to Moto2, whereas Leopard obviously don't. And obviously with the KTM being currently a better bike, there's rumoured to be some Honda upgrades coming in that they think will get them sort of a bit closer. It is a bit of a shame to see one of the sort of top riders in the class moving away from the Hondas, because I feel like that's another thing that's sort of adding to their lack of competitiveness. They don't really have, apart from Piqueras, Frasado, maybe one or two others, they just don't really have the level of talent that all the KTM teams do. As for how much I'd pay for him, obviously Empty Helmets value him quite highly, and they're willing to pay him. The commentators are saying a six-figure salary, for next year. So obviously they rate him quite highly, and he sort of backed up that with, I won't spoil the results, but he did sort of back that up with what he did in the Moto3 class this weekend.
Well, we're not spoiling them because we are about to talk about Moto3, and I'll give my thoughts there. What you just said, that he backed up all the hype around him, because while he was the instigator of an unfortunate incident involving Scott Ogden that led to him receiving a double long lap penalty, he then went into the race and absolutely, I don't know, just showed so much class and so much charging through the field with a little bit aggressive riding, but not overly aggressive. He came back from a double long lap penalty to win the race. That's just incredible. And yes, it was a bit bunched up at the front and it was like this last minute scrap. I just absolutely loved this race. MP2 is Danny Holgado and MP3 is Ivan Ortola. So overall, I just thought it was quite a sensational race. But how about you?
Moto3 was a great race. I admit I am watching it on holidays, so trying to get connection to watch it was a pain. But overall the racing was absolutely insane. As a Vire fan, wasn't too great. He did finish in around the same position as when he qualified, so it wasn't too bad, but he kind of just went like completely down the order at the start, down to like 10th or 11th, and I just thought he was conserving tyres, but he wasn't. He was just slow. Made his way back up, but it was just awful.
Yeah, I almost think the ride from Piqueras was sort of David Alonso-like from last year. Just sort of, obviously he wasn't sitting in the group the entire race like Alonso normally does, but he sort of got to the end, and as Alonso did a few times last year, just sort of carved through everyone, and as they were fighting, it sort of seemed like they were thinking, oh, where's this guy come from? I mean, for the spectators, hopefully he keeps that up for the rest of the year, and we see some good battles. Apart from that, I felt like it was a good battle for the front sort of positions. Obviously really close. Pretty much all of the title contenders were up there. The only other part was David Alonso got a one position drop on the last lap for exceeding track limits, which was just sort of as he was almost in the lead, and then he just sort of started getting beat up and dropped backwards a bit. Apart from that, as always, I'm just going to go over some of the rookies. Obviously, Piqueras won the race. The next rookie was Luca Lunetta, who finished P9. He started on the front row, got a double long lap penalty for just ever so slightly jumping the start. but still recovered back to get some good points. David Almanza was up in P11, which I believe is his best result of the year. Jacob Ralston got some points in 12th. Then you have to go down to 16th for Carraro. Zuratuza was 18th. Jacob Rosenthaler, who's not a full-time rider, he was doing a wildcard, got 19th. And then it was Noah Detweiler, Tachkorn Bouazri, and Joel Esteban. And that was all of the rookies.
Yeah, I have to admit, I found Luca Linetta's jump start surprisingly harsh. It was barely a jump start. And while the penalty fits the crime, it just seemed, really quite harsh. So, looking at Moto2, we saw Tony Arbolino take back-to-back podiums, and not only did he have back-to-back podiums, he got his very first pole position in the class. He has more than 70 starts in Moto2, and so it is really good to see him on the front row in that front spot for the first time. In P2, taking his favourite position is Aaron Canet, and in P1 was Iagura. Now, Iagura also took the championship lead from teammate Sergio Garcia, who suffered a horrendous high side earlier in the weekend, and comments were made post-race that he was feeling his shoulders dislocate throughout the weekend. And the fact he qualified from memory down in about 23rd position and managed to get himself back up to 12th while his shoulders are in that much pain, I just wanted to shout out to him because that was an absolutely incredible ride. But what are your thoughts on the race and the performances?
Yeah, it was another sort of race in Moto2 where it seems like only one of the title contenders were really up there. Obviously, with Sergio Garcia, it's more the fact that he's suffered a couple of injuries lately. Apart from that, Jake Dixon was sort of a bit down at the start, but did manage to get up to P5. Fermin Aldeguer was 6th. Managed to avoid getting a long lap penalty for track limits. He was on a track limits warning. But Joe Roberts was sort of fighting down in the lower half of the points. Got overtaken by Garcia in the end, and Garcia actually put a 2.5 second gap on him. Apart from that, it was a good race by Agura, sort of just stuck in there behind, I believe it was Canet for a bit, and just overtook him when he needed to. Made a little bit of a mistake trying to pass him down into the hairpin, just overcooked it a bit, but managed to regroup and got on the back of him. The only other part that I can really remember of the race was Celestino Vietti crashing out of, I believe it was a podium late on. Bit of a shame for Vietti, but I'm sure he'll regroup for the next race in Misano.
Speaking of crashes, the other possible championship contender who crashed was Alonso Lopez, and this is such a strong track for him, so that would be a very disappointing result for Speed Up. Moving on to MotoGP, we'll start with the sprint because we had an all VR46 front row. Unfortunately, that didn't translate into results for the VR46 Academy. Well, it did for 2 of them. Marco Bezzecchi was one half of a double DNF for Team VR46. Morbidelli back on the podium, back on the front row, and overall just really happy with how strong his performance was on Saturday. P2, Pecco Bagnaia, some nice solid points from him, but without a doubt the sprint performance came from Jorge Martin, who was a rocket ship off the line. He was honestly so incredible to get into P1, and he was definitely my rider of Saturday. How did you find the sprint?
Yeah, it was quite exciting with, again, sort of the midfield-ish battles. Obviously, that start from Jorge Martin will probably be the highlight of his weekend, which I'm sure we'll get into eventually. Solid race from Martin. Managed to withstand the pressure after he got past Bagnaia. It was great to see Morbidelli back in sort of podium contention all weekend. I know it's obviously a strong track for him and the rest of the VR46 riders, but with some of the struggles he's had this year, it was good to see him up there. Apart from that, can't really remember much else that happened. Apart from Fabio Quartararo getting into the points in P9, which was points for the Japanese bikes are always good to see. So
GP sprint was pretty painful, I'd say, because I was probably overly excited about Marco Bezzecchi having a good qualifying, and I was like, oh my god, he's going to get a podium, he's going to get really good points. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't, because in the sprint, both VR46s went down, Fabio Di Giannantonio, and then Marco Bezzecchi, and I was like, oh. I believe it was because, I think for Marco it was because his ride height device just had a problem, and then he was just kind of trundling along until he fell. There wasn't much he could do, he was just losing positions, and it wasn't like he was going to get any better, so it was probably best that his misery ended so quick. Pedro Acosta actually had a really good finish in the 6th, which I'm happy with, because as a rookie, he's actually performing really well. People expected, like, because he's on a Tech 3 that he'd be really slow, he'd be like a Gusto finishing like 16, 17, but he's actually been coming through with sprint podiums, good points results. He's doing well for a rookie, even though people did want him to do more. I think it's unfair to have that kind of expectations on him when he's literally barely 20. It's unfair. Fabio Quartararo actually finished really well in 9th. He got a point for his team on that Yamaha. Almost impossible. So as much as people say it's only a point, it means nothing. For that team, 1 point means everything. Luca Marini finished 18th, which is important because he didn't participate in the race because he woke up Sunday feeling unwell. And I was like, okay, both Repsol Honda riders are out, which was weird. Sprint overall probably wasn't as entertaining as the race, but still good overall.
Jorge Martin, definitely his highlight was Saturday, because what a shocking call that was made on Sunday. We're all sitting there, we hear the fact that, rain has started to fall as the grid is set. You see Mark pull off his trademark smirk, and that's when I swapped him in the Discord server fantasy to win, because I'm like, oh, there's even a hint of rain. It's going to be Mark's weekend. It was Mark's weekend, and he got into P1. P2 was Pecco Bagnaia, and P3 was Enea Bastianini. But this race, the biggest talking point is the fact that Jorge Martin, championship leader, pulled in for a bike swap because it was raining, and then it stopped raining. Pecco Bagnaia and all the locals, plus a number of other riders, stayed out. They, I suppose, knew the conditions because they know this track so well, and because it stopped raining, the track dried up pretty much instantly, and Jorge Martin had to swap for dry tyres again. An absolute disaster of a weekend. He did manage to salvage a single point by coming home in P15, but just overall, what a shocking call, and what do you make of this call?
yeah, it was really surprising. Obviously, generally, I feel like in that sort of situation, the game plan is just sort of mirror your title rival, do whatever they do. But from what I've heard, I know Enea Bastianini was quoted as saying this, and apparently Bagnaia also said it. But it was also a bit of sort of local knowledge with the fact that Enea was saying that whenever it's about to start heavily raining, there's a sort of certain smell that they get, and as soon as it started raining, he wasn't getting that, so he knew it'd be light, and said, "Oh well, as soon as that happened, I knew to stay out," which obviously is a bit sort of unlucky for Martin if he didn't realize that. Martin's also been quoted as saying that next time he just won't take a gamble and just sort of do whatever Bagnaia does. So if we have another situation like that this year, hopefully they make a better sort of judgment call on it.
MotoGP race was definitely more entertaining in terms of championship battle, because Pecco Bagnaia finished second, and then people will say, oh, so I suppose Jorge Martin finished first. No, he did not. Jorge Martin finished 15th place after there was a slight bit of rain, a little bit of drizzle. And then Jorge goes, oh god, it's starting to rain, I have to go pit for a new bike. Which in normal terms would actually be a good decision, but it just wasn't going his way because the rain stopped. And he was stuck on a bike with wet tyres on a drying track, which, if you know how that goes, not great. You either end up in the gravel or you end up dead last, which is basically what happened to Jorge. He finished a lap down in 15th place. He got a point, but is that really important when you're only 7 points ahead of your championship rival? So yeah, it's a pretty bad weekend for Jorge Martin, and I say that even though he did win the sprint, in terms that he could have won both the race and the sprint, but he screwed it up. Now, considering the fact that I said Pecco Bagnaia finished second, who won the race? Was it Pedro Acosta? Was it Enea Bastianini? Was it Brad Binder? No, it was Marc Marquez doing the double. After 1,043 days without a win at all, sprint wins don't count. He comes through and does a double. How does that happen? How do you go from a drought of over 1,000 days and then win 2 races in a row? It's mental. He won with a 3-second lead to Pecco Bagnaia, which is mental. Enea Bastianini rounded out the podium. So for me, in terms of favourites, this was really good podium. Marco Bezzecchi finished 5th, which is better than the DNF he had the day before. So I'll take some good points for that team because they've just had really horrible luck. Fabio Quartararo on that Yamaha, I don't know what he did to it this weekend, but he was actually able to do something with it. So he finished 7th and got himself 9 points, which is better than Alex Rins, who I believe is still recovering from injury, but it's not going well for him. I think the Yamaha just isn't really suited to him. It's just not going well. The Aprilia bikes just had a bit of a howler, I'm going to be honest. Aleix Espargaro went down. Maverick Vinales finished 16th and outside of the points. The Aprilias have had moments where they're really up high, they're having wins, podiums, and then they have really bad lows where they're just nowhere, no points, and it was a low this weekend. Franco Morbidelli actually went down after his podium the day before, which was, will I be rude if I said not shocking, but it kind of wasn't shocking. He's just not, I haven't really seen his capability of having 2 good results in a row, which is actually really depressing. But same with Pedro Acosta, actually, I must say. This weekend he's had really good highs and then really bad lows. And then the main race was a low. He finished 17th, a lap down, just slow as hell. Even Stefan Bradl scored 2 points. And he's a test rider. He has more points than Luca Marini, who's a full-time rider. There's something wrong there. Pol Espargaro did finish 10th in the main race, and that means he got himself some 6 points. He definitely could have gotten more, but I'll take it rather than nothing else. And actually, I mentioned to the Rebel KTM team, who had Brad Binder finishing in 4th and Jack Miller finishing in 8th. I wonder why KTM just doesn't get good points. I think it's because of Jack Miller. He's not consistent enough. He's had really good highs where people are like, oh my god, he's finishing 4th, he might get a podium. And then no, he crashed. Last time I had my hopes up, he crashed. And people are like, oh, but he's got points this weekend. He got 4. Okay, it's not like he used to have highs where he was winning races, getting podiums, and now he's not. It's gotten to a point where his teammate is beating him every single race. And people are like, he deserves a seat. He doesn't, not with his performances. I understand he's better than some of the other riders on the grid, but they're leaving at the end of the season. He should be as well. It's gotten to a point where he's just there on a bike that should be getting podiums, and he's not. And it's not fair to keep that seat from other riders who could do so much more with it. Like Dennis Onchu. No, that's probably a bit of a stretch. Like Sergio Garcia. He could have gotten that Tech 3 ride after Pedro Acosta moved up to KTM, but that's not happening because Jack Miller wants to keep a seat on that grid when he doesn't deserve it. But apart from that, pretty good race weekend, I'd say.
That is a wrap from us. Hopefully Kelly will be back with us for some in-person/virtual banter from next week. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be back with some more news and predictions ahead of the second Misano Grand Prix. We'll also do a little bit of discussion around the test that is occurring today. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next week.